Today, we are unfortunately talking about Shadowland. Hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent Casina, and today we're back on our Daredevil kick, and we are talking about the Daredevil event, Shadowland. Yes, we're talking about the main series here in the Daredevil tie-in books, so if you're following along in trade paperbacks, this is the one that completes or finishes Andy Diggle's run, although this is not the Shadowland event. This one is. They're two separate books, but I thought, I could talk about them separately, but there's not so much to talk about them separately because they do tie in together, but at the same time, none of them are that good to fill up like a, 6 to 8 minute long video each. So I figure I'll throw them in and just get the content out there instead of trying to milk something for views that don't exist on my channel. So that's fine anyway. But yeah, so Shadowland, we saw Daredevil, when last we saw him, he's the leader of the Hand, Matt Murdock, and he had tried to take over it, and he's trying to be a force for good. Unfortunately, we found out that the ninjas inside the Hand had been manipulating him, and we learn in this volume that he's a vessel for the Beast of the Hand, which is some alternate demonic figure and stuff like that. So in Shadowland, basically you have Daredevil, who's basically king for a day in Hell's Kitchen. It really feels like only a day goes by in this book. That's how weird it is as far as time goes. And he's built this big Japanese castle in the middle of Hell's Kitchen. In the last volume, Bullseye blew up a whole building, so that thing is now built on that block. A lot of time passes, apparently, because they built a whole building in what feels like a week, as opposed to like the months or years it would probably take if you blew up an entire city block and then built something on top of it. But hey, it's comic books. So the kind of inciting incident of Shadowland is Daredevil getting back at Bullseye for his actions, and that kind of sends all the heroes and the supporting cast over here in the Daredevil book itself in a tizzy, going, hey, what's going on with Matt? Did you see what he did? I can't believe he did that. Let's just say, if you know what Bullseye did to Elektra, you can kind of figure out what Daredevil does to Bullseye at the end of Shadowland #1. Now, so I kind of read these separately. I read Shadowland, and it took me all of about 5 minutes to read, and then I read the Daredevil tie-in, and I'm glad I did. I was paging through this a little bit first, trying to figure out what the reading order might be, or if I need to jump back and forth. You don't. This era of Daredevil's terrible, so this is just basically deals with Foggy and not Milla, who's the girl detective going on in Daredevil, and at the time you got the same artists. Unfortunately, Roberto De La Torre and Marco Cicchetto, who had been doing all the hard lifting on Daredevil with Andy Diggle, did not get promoted to do the main event. They left that to Billy Tan. Now, I'm not trashing Billy Tan. He's certainly fine here. This image on the cover is John Cassaday, back when John Cassaday still could kind of draw. I don't believe he can anymore, honestly. I'm just not a fan of his stuff. Like, this is fine, but there's nothing great to me about his covers or images or anything like that. So Billy Tan is kind of fresh off his run with New Avengers. I believe he was doing that with Bendis during the Secret Invasion stuff, and I liked him on there. Unfortunately, Billy Tan on here just kind of falls apart. I think the big run he did before this was Brubaker's X-Men, The Rise and Fall of the Shi'ar Empire, if you remember that. That I felt he was like phenomenal on when it was coming out. But just reading him here, and maybe this might be nostalgia eyes versus like I didn't pull out the New Avengers book. I don't have Rise and Fall of the Shi'ar Empire on hand to pull out to compare to, but just the art here is just not, doesn't feel great. Doesn't feel like it's event level quality. Like usually Marvel, when they do their arts, do their events, they put their best artists on there. And this was kind of an event. Like there were tie-in issues with Moon Knight, like Ghost Rider appears in here. You got Luke Cage, Heroes for Hire, I believe, had a book at the time, or Villains for Hire, whatever it was, and it had tie-in issues. You had, miniseries and stuff like that all had the Shadowland banner on the top. And so they were trying to do something. Unfortunately, the story just falls apart under its own I don't know, not weight, but just the silliness of it. Like, really, Matt Murdock is going to be the leader of the Hand and do what now? I don't believe that for a second, and it's that unbelievability that carries along throughout this series that you're like, I don't believe this for a second. This is really weird. This is really funky. And then at the end, of course, it turns out that Daredevil turns into, like, even his horns get bigger with his black costume. It's really bad. Ron Garney and what's his face? Charles Soule did a black costume later on in the last 10 years or so, and it looked better than this. But yeah, here's Daredevil turning into a monster. You got Ghost Rider showing up, trying to do stuff with him because, you know, this is now a supernatural book, which totally makes sense for Daredevil, and it totally makes sense for the Hand, and definitely does not play into, I'm being facetious, but it definitely does not play into the things that Brubaker had set up before in his run. So this kind of leaves Daredevil destroyed, honestly, in terms of a character. Like, Matt Murdock's life is destroyed, turned upside down. All the heroes don't trust him. And the problem of this book is that the plot of it and the climax and the resolution happens so fast. I mean, you're only talking about 5 issues here, but it really feels like, hey, something's up with Daredevil. Oh, here it is. Oh, we fixed it. Oh, okay, we're done. Like, there's no build-up. There's no seeds that were planted before in the other Daredevil run to make this satisfying. So the fact that it's over is fine. You know, the fact that it destroyed Matt Murdock as a character is kind of a bummer, because you never, you know, you can't really, how do you come back from this? You know what I mean? You've got to go away and do penance. Now, there is another series called Daredevil Reborn, also written by Andy Diggle. I don't know if I read that whole thing. I have it on my iPad. I don't have the actual trade. So I'll read it. We'll talk about it if it's necessary, but I kind of feel like from here, you can just, if you got this far, or if you want to read Shadowland, you're not doing yourself any favors. It's not terrible, but it's not great. And it's certainly not good either. So it's pretty below average in terms of a Marvel event. So if you want to read it, I think you can, but just don't say I didn't warn you, right? Again, not terrible comics, but just like, man, this fell off a cliff in terms of quality from Bendis to Brubaker, and now the end of Andy Diggle's run. And I kind of like the last volume, honestly, so that's kind of a bummer. But yeah, from here we get to Mark Waid, which I'm excited to read because that's awesome stuff, stuff there. So yeah, back to the main Daredevil book. Roberto Del Toro and Marco Cicchetto doing gangbusters on art. Like, honestly, the art here, you know, it's better than the art in the main book because, you know, and it's kind of weird that they didn't graduate these guys to be the artist of the main book and have someone else fill in on Daredevil. That's a little strange. Could be because they're drawing just as many characters in here. But since Daredevil is kind of the focus of the Shadowland series, his main title focuses on Foggy and Kingpin and this other cop, and then also sets up this weird status quo for Daredevil afterwards in, I think in the last issue, and there's also this penultimate issue after the fall, where you find out that freaking Black Panther takes over as Guardian of Hell's Kitchen, and I do remember those issues. It's like Black Panther, the Man Without Fear, or something like that, and he's got, I thought he had such a crazy costume in this after the fall thing. Yeah, he's got like a flak jacket on. This is drawn by Marco Cicchetto, so it looks pretty cool. But I don't remember who wrote those issues of Black Panther, but they were basically keeping the numbering of the Daredevil book and just changed the title. So that one starts with 513 of this Daredevil volume, but it says, I think it's called Black Panther, Man Without Fear. There was an artist on there that blew up. The guy who was doing, Francesco Francavilla, was doing the art on that Black Panther run that takes place after this at the time, and I think he blew up from that. So check that out, I think. I haven't read it, so I can't vouch for it, but I think the art's pretty good. I like Francesco Francavilla. He's kind of an acquired taste because he uses a limited color palette all the time. So in some ways that's inspiring, and in other ways that's really limiting. So your mileage may vary with his art style, but I think he's a pretty good artist. So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say about Shadowland. The less said, the better, probably. Again, just disappointing coming off the high highs of the Bendis run and the Brubaker run, and then kind of Brubaker kind of downslid towards the end there, and then just Andy Diggle not being able to pull up for the recovery of this plane and just kind of just crashing it in the ground. And that's kind of where we leave Matt Murdock here at the end of Shadowland. So thank you guys for watching this long Daredevil Odyssey we've been on. Let me know down below in the comments. If you like Shadowland, let me know. I'd be interested to see what you like about it. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time in the Funny Pages.